Good afternoon, Facebook friends and YouTube followers. This is Rich again, and now I'm on the part 2 of the Austin McMahon feud. I'm going to pick up where I left up in October of 1998 for this portion of the Austin McMahon feud. Stone Cold Steve Austin was assigned to referee the Undertaker vs. Kane match for the WWE Championship at the October 1998 WWE pay-per-view. And Vince McMahon says, call it right down the middle or you'll get fired. And then during the match, Stone Cold did not even call it down the middle. He just, beat up on both of them, gave them stunners, and then Vince McMahon says, screw you, Stone Cold, you're fired! And then the next night on Raw, they had all the WWE superstars come down, and then Vince McMahon said that don't cross the boss. And they were warning him, if you cross the boss, you're fired. But then they had a thing of Stone Cold up there with a picture, and all through the night he was stalking Vince McMahon, and he came down at the end of the night. They dragged the wheelchair. Stone Cold dragged his wheelchair down Vince McMahon, and then he went into the ring, and then Stone Cold had a gun, but it was a toy gun, and he says, ugh, and he says, McMahon 316 says, I just wet your pants, I just peed on your pants, and the another stunner by Stone Cold on Vince McMahon, and he gave him a letter. The next week on Raw, it was revealed that Vince McMahon's son Shane reinstated Stone Cold Steve Austin from being fired. He rehired him. And then a few weeks later, on Survivor Series 1998, for the title tournament for the WWE title to be awarded, Stone Cold faced off against Mankind in the semifinals, and Stone Cold was dominated in the match until the referee was dragged out by Vince McMahon and his stooge. He beat up the referee, and then Shane comes down because he was demoted to a referee, and Austin gave Mankind the stunner, and Shane did 1, 2, and he gave him the middle finger, and Jim Ross says, that son of a bitch. And then Mankind won against Stone Cold, and then it was revealed it was a plan all along. Shane had sided with his father and became a heel, and then they continued their feud in December of 1998. It was Rock Bottom, the pay-per-view. Stone Cold faced off against The Undertaker in a buried alive match. Vince McMahon put in a stipulation if Stone Cold needed to beat The Undertaker in the buried alive match. If he didn't, he wouldn't get a shot in the Royal Rumble. Stone Cold beat like The Undertaker, and then he got in the Royal Rumble. But on Raw, they had a drawing, and the drawing was like Vince McMahon Stone Cold drew number 1 in 1991 Royal Rumble, and Vince McMahon drew number 30, but it was reversed by WWE Commissioner Shawn Michaels, saying Vince McMahon drew number 2. And they continued on with their feuding and stuff into the 1999 Royal Rumble, where Austin and McMahon faced off. And this Royal Rumble matchup was the absolute worst Royal Rumble matchup of all time, because it was so much stalling between McMahon and Austin, fighting out of the ring and stuff. The corporate team attacked Stone Cold. He was knocked out. He was stretchered off. Went to a local hospital, but he drew by the ambulance and came back. And then Vince McMahon was doing commentary with Michael Cole and Jerry the King Lawler. And then there was a bounty on Stone Cold. If somebody tossed him out, they would get a $50,000 bounty, but nobody did. And it went to Austin and McMahon. Austin grabbed McMahon from the broadcast booth, beat him up, but then The Rock came down, who won the WWE Championship earlier in the night against Mankind, and then he was being distracted. Vince McMahon throws Stone Cold out of the ring, and then Vince McMahon wins the Royal Rumble. People were going crazy. Jerry the King Lawler says, Vince McMahon's going to WrestleMania. And then the next night on Raw, Vince McMahon forfeited the right of his WWE title shot to The Rock, because that would have been the worst match of all time. The Rock against Vince McMahon at WrestleMania 15. What would have happened? Maybe The Rock would have laid down to Vince McMahon like they did with Hogan and Nash on Monday Nitro in January 1999. That would have probably killed the WWE's momentum if that ever happened, but it didn't. And then Stone Cold shows up on the Triton. He and Shawn Michaels talking, saying that I'm going to WrestleMania to face the champion. And then they showed him with Shawn Michaels saying once the winner of the Royal Rumble forfeits his title shot, it goes to the runner-up, and the runner-up was Stone Cold Steve Austin. And Stone Cold Steve Austin said that he was still champ, that he's going to get this title shot. But then Vince McMahon made up like a match between him and Stone Cold at St. Valentine's Day Massacre 1999 in a steel cage match. Austin had to put up his title shot at WrestleMania against Vince McMahon, and then this cage match was very, very amazing. Vince took some crazy bombs. They actually had to stop it for a while, but Vince wanted to go on, and Stone Cold was beating him up, and hiding underneath the ring was the Big Show, and he came out and he threw Austin into the cage, but he didn't realize he threw him into the cage, and the cage like shook and broke off. Stone Cold won by the whiffers of teeth, beat like McMahon, and then they face off. He gets his title shot against The Rock, and there were still more skits with this happening, the build up to WrestleMania 15 and stuff like that. 2 weeks before WrestleMania 15, Austin has a beer truck into the arena, and he sprays the corporate team of The Rock, Shane McMahon, and Vince McMahon with beer. Very, very funny. And then Austin beats The Rock for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 15, but then The Rock wants his Smoking Skull belt. But McMahon says it's hanging in my mantle in his house. And then next thing you know, McMahon hits Stone Cold with the belt. And this is when their feud kind of died off a little bit, because Vince McMahon was actually feuding with The Undertaker about the the ministry was like a kidnapped Vince McMahon's daughter, Stephanie. This was her first on-screen role, and The Undertaker was trying to marry Stephanie, and Austin and McMahon aligned with themselves as faces, trying to like destroy the Ministry of Darkness, but it was all planned because it was a greater power, and the greater power was Vince McMahon. And he says, "Oh, it was me, Austin, it was me all along." That ruined it. That ruined that angle, because you know that the greater power angle should have been Jake the Snake Roberts, because Austin beat Roberts for the King of the Ring in 1996, and that would have been perfect for Jake the Snake to play as the greater power if he was in a great state of mind, because Jake the Snake Roberts has battled drug and alcohol addiction for years. That would have been a perfect role for Jake. But anyway, like then once Vince McMahon reveals the greater power, Linda and Stephanie were very disappointed, saying that they made decisions that they were resigning from leaving the WWE, but they named their successor was Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then Stone Cold did a lot of stuff, like on a skit he put like manure in Vince McMahon's office, and they had a match for a King of the Ring 1999, a ladder match between Stone Cold Steve Austin and the McMahons, Vince and Shane. There was a briefcase saying Austin put up his CEO against McMahon's ownership of the WWE, and when Stone Cold was trying to grab it, it would lift. Nobody knew who did it. It was speculation, many people, and somehow Shane got it, and then Shane took it, and the McMahons won. And the next night on Raw, the McMahons fired Steve Austin as CEO, but Austin had one more thing. He says, with like the CEO, I signed myself to a title match with The Undertaker on Raw. He beats The Undertaker with the stunner and becomes WWE champion again. And then there was another thing, Fully Loaded 1999, Austin versus The Undertaker, with the stipulation of Austin lost, he would leave the WWE, but if like The Undertaker lost, Vince McMahon would leave WWE for good, and Stone Cold won, beat The Undertaker at Fully Loaded with help with X-Pac, and then Vince McMahon had to leave the WWE, and people were like going crazy. Next night on Raw, like he wanted to shake hands with Austin, saying the better man ran, but he said something saying you will lose and stuff like that. He should have gave him a stunner, but he had Jim Ross sing na 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 hey 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 goodbye. Very funny. That really was the end of the significant Austin McMahon feud. They've like had maybe other stuff ever since, like 2001 when Austin turned heel and aligned himself with Vince McMahon. That was a flop to the beginning. He regained the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 17 on April 1st, 2001. I thought it was an April Fool's Day joke. I thought the next night on Raw, when Stone Cold had to explain his actions, maybe he would have said to Vince, April Fools, and give him the stunner. That would have been funny, but they wanted to go with Austin as a heel, but that didn't work out, and they had some run-ins later on in the years. In November, when Stone Cold was asked to join the Kiss My Ass Club, he didn't. He gave him the low blow and attacked him and stuff like that, but the Dudleys stuff. And then Jim Ross was supposed to join Kiss My Ass Club at Oklahoma City. I heard a rumor about that after he was supposed to join the Kiss My Ass Club, that Jim Ross was supposed to be turning heel and becoming Vince McMahon's stooge on air, but that never happened. That probably would be the only good way to get JR as a heel, if he was aligned as Vince McMahon's stooge on television, but I think they didn't want to do that because they didn't have faith as Michael Cole becoming the #1 play-by-play announcer of the WWE, voice of WWE, and then on occasion Stone Cold would come back and like give McMahon stunners and stuff and old timers things like Raw specials and stuff like that, but that was about it. It for the McMahon Austin feud. Was the best feud of all time. It actually ran its course after WrestleMania 15, which it should have ended with their feuding, but they did the Greater Power, which like got kind of stale and stuff. But that was about. I didn't want to see it go on 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years because it would be very stale. You would have to come up with fresh ideas and stuff like that. Like I gave you that fresh idea. There was a rumor that Jim Ross was going to turn heel after joining the Kiss My Ass Club and feud with and be Vince McMahon's stooge on air, and then say stuff about Stone Cold and stuff like that. But that never came to be. I didn't think it would have worked with Jim Ross as a heel, or maybe it would have worked for a little bit, but then maybe it would have been that Stone Cold sent him in as a spy, and then we could get more Stone Cold Vince feuding. And that's about it on that. And I'll be back later for the fourth and final video blog of the night about why Major League Baseball should add a third wild card team. Okay, have a good night, everybody. See you tonight.